part of me wants to recommend that there are other ways that you can drive an engagement that doesn't drive somebody to a landing page. So for example, on Instagram, you can have moments where you could ask the consumer to say, remind me. So imagine you're dropping an incredible collaboration. It's going to be launched in 1 week's time. Rather than saying, learn more and driving somebody to a landing page, you've got the option to say, remind me. And that's it. You've got them hooked. They know something's coming and they'll get a reminder on their phone.
You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-com strategy, technology and CX-focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and re-platform specialists James Gedd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-com strategy and leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX. This episode is sponsored by Shopify. Another week, another amazing guest, and I'm delighted to be talking to Geeta Randev today, who's a highly experienced digital and customer experience consultant. Stacks of expertise optimizing customer journeys across leading brands, including Champion Animal, Heineken, and who is a consumer champion, basically. So I'm really happy to have you on board today, Geeta. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. And that was such a lovely intro. James, if you ever want to be my PR manager, honestly, tell me what it takes. I'll happily have you on board.
Yes, and we were just chatting before we start recording about our industry becoming a little bit more open and free and sweary. So I'll be your first sweary PR manager.
I try not to swear, but I have to say, with everything going on in the world, it does draw it out of me, and I can't help it. I think when used in the right context, a swear word can go a very long way.
If Stephen Fry argues swearing is a sign of intelligence, then who am I to argue? So look, before we get into the questions, we're going to be talking, for everyone listening, we're going to be talking about investing in the upper funnel, measuring and monetizing and nurturing customers. And this is such a big area. If anyone who'd listened was at the Pulse event last week, there's a lot of talk about more brands, especially in the I guess the mid to upper market and premium brands, investing in upper funnel marketing, brand, etc. So we're going to get into the hows and the whys. But before we do, Geeta, why don't you give people a flavour for who you are, what you do, and what you're passionate about?
Absolutely. So I've been in the industry for 15 years, which seems like a really long time. And in that space, so much has changed when it comes to online and e-commerce. I am obsessed with consumer journeys. I love watching how people engage with online, whether that's marketing or an e-commerce website and CRM. I just think it's shifted the entire landscape of how we shop and discover and consider purchases. So since, I think, beginning of 2010, I worked at BlackBerry, which we weren't really selling directly. It was a lead generation company, driving leads to our channel partners. And then fast forward all the way through to Champion, who I left at the end of 2024. And the differences that I see in consumers and how they really kind of take digital as the epicenter of their decision-making has been quite phenomenal. So I've always been interested to understand how people are using digital to make informed decisions about their purchase journey. Back in the day, you'd have a split between considered purchases, things like houses and cars, and then things that you would just buy willy-nilly. But actually, I think today everything is a considered purchase. And I'm kind of trying to avoid fast fashion because it's an area that I just really don't sponsor and believe in, but it is making a bit of an indent of how people are shopping online. So my passion point's always been about understanding that consumer behavior and how we could really offer them the best experience. But beyond that, personally, I'm also really keen in trying to push for advocacy for women in MarTech in that space and breaking that glass ceiling. There's definitely been a shift. There's definitely more women in leadership roles that I'm seeing. Lots of new brands that are founder-led, that are women-led, which is so nice to see. And I see it all across LinkedIn. So I try and just put my hand to the table to try and help move that along as well, open that conversation. And I'm an advocate for that on LinkedIn. If anybody follows me, I'm quite opinionated. Really happy to say that I have been recognized by Yotpo and Wonderkind as someone that is trying to make change. So, James, I think you're one of our sponsors, and definitely I'm going to keep trying to do that.
Yeah, amazing. Congratulations on the awards. I'm a massive fan of what companies like Yotpo have done for really pushing the story around successful women in e-commerce and digital, with the amazing women in e-commerce from Yotpo. You've got Voyardo doing similar things. You got 5874 in the women's domain. So there's some really strong communities building out, which is lovely to see.
Absolutely.
Right, let's talk about marketing now. And we spend a lot of time talking about tech on this podcast, but we also look at the strategic side of e-com. And I think that the marketing side is fascinating for people because everyone's trying to scramble at the moment. The times are hard. Trading's difficult. competition's high. The dominance of paid media over organic is something that frustrates a lot of people. But I feel like we're kind of going round in it, like going back full circle here, because there used to be lots of brand investment and then everyone just went bottom of the funnel and conversion. And now people are realizing that actually you don't build loyalty in customers and true brand awareness if you don't invest and get people into your journey. So let's start right at the beginning of this. Is like, why should brands and why do brands invest in the upper funnel?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I love the fact that you use the term scramble, because I think that's exactly what's happening. There seems to be a bit of push and pull. So from a brand perspective, I think there's that recognition now that we could rely on bottom of the funnel. ROI was quite quick and you could see what your investment was giving you. But because of the competition and how the fact that I feel consumers are no longer as brand loyal as they used to be, all of a sudden we're having to try and top up what that funnel is. And so brand investment or upper funnel marketing has become a bit more popular in the last couple of years. Then you've kind of got the other side of it, where you've got platforms like Google and Meta who are making it so much harder for consumers to find what they're looking for to get to a brand. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you touched upon it, the fact that we now have to invest more in paid rather than organic to try and get traffic to your website. So those platforms have to make money. Let's not try and, get around that and beat around the bush. They have to make money, and they're making it harder for brands to get that real estate on their platforms. So going up to upper funnel marketing, whether that's driven by product or storytelling or just the emotion of a brand, has become the new space that people are competing for. So obviously we know that the volume of people sit at the top of the funnel. That's kind of why it's up there. It's really, really broad. But they are broad. And what that means is they might not know enough about your brand. They might not be in a ready to buy state. And therefore, when you invest in that part of the funnel, you've got to remember that it's the beginning of a consumer journey with your brand. They're trying to attract a new audience to kind of fall in love with you. So I think to invest in that area is a long-term strategy, and to understand that when you do it, to get people down the bottom of the funnel, a brand effectively has to own all of that. And kind of what I'm seeing is that people are just investing in upper funnel, assuming they're going to get the same results as bottom of the funnel. And that's simply not the case.
Yeah, so that moves us nicely on to talking about managing expectations, because I see so many sort of teams, especially smaller e-com teams and trading teams, under pressure to deliver numbers. And when trading gets harder, like when a giant orange baby screws the world through tariffs, for example, and then all of a sudden it's like the pressures increase and like, right, we need to hit, our numbers need to change. Is managing that expectation about what top of the funnel is and what impact it has and when you'll realize benefits from it. So when you're working with people, what are the expectations you think that need to be set in order to understand how top of the funnel works differently to like that last stage conversion piece?
Yeah, and it really is an empowerment and education area. When we think about upper funnel investment, unlike lower funnel, you have to consider that those types of campaigns have to be at minimum 12 months. So trying to get that investment for upper funnel marketing has got to be a really long-term strategy. And that means probably you're going to have to start off with your finance teams and leadership and C-level to understand what the value might be. Managing expectations for me, I think, is one of the hardest things I've had to do in all of my experiences that I've had in the last 10 years, because people simply don't understand what upper funnel investment means and how quickly someone's going to convert. So I think on one hand, you have to try and educate people on the platforms that you're going to invest in. I think that's always a really good starting point. The value of Meta and the value of Google. And we touched upon it before. On Meta, you're not going to find a ready to buy audience. On Google, you probably are. And just understanding what the relationship is between them. But then I think it goes all the way down to, if you are going to invest in upper funnel marketing, you have to be really clear about how you're going to report on that. What are the measures of success? Is it going to be sales? And effectively, at the end of the day, that has to be one of the metrics. Is it going to be more people talking about your brand? Is it that we want to try and increase the number of searches that we have on a brand term? Like, what do those KPIs look like? And the second thing is that might be different for different teams within the organization. Finance are going to care about your ROAS and your ROI. If I give you this money, what am I going to get in return in terms of that revenue? Whereas then you've got marketing to say, okay, if we invest this money, are we looking to try and grow our loyalty and retention database? Are we looking to try and get traffic to your website? I think having that clarity on the KPIs in the different parts of the business is also really important. Key thing is though, and I will stress this until I'm blue in the face, please anticipate a longer conversion window. Do not assume that you're going to be getting results 1 week later. And even sitting agency side, it honestly blew my mind how many clients expected, right, have we seen an impact in sales? It doesn't just work that way. So longer conversion windows are really important to understand. It will be different for every brand, but at minimum, it will be 6 months, at maximum, probably a year. So it's a long time.
What do Mattel, Victoria Beckham, Sennheiser, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet. It also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify, powering the future of enterprise commerce. Find out more at shopify.com/enterprise.
Yeah, I find this conversation really interesting actually, because I don't do digital marketing. I work with a lot of businesses that obviously do, and I get involved in projects where that is one of the streams. But you get conversations of, oh yeah, but you're talking about just investing in brand. It's all fluffy. Like, we can't measure that. So I'd love to hear from you. How do you go about, because that you touched upon the different stakeholders and adjusting the narrative to suit those stakeholders. I do the same in re-platforming when I'm doing cost models and business cases. How we talk to the CFO is very different to how we talk to a CDO, for example. So what's your advice? How do you manage that? And how do you validate it? Because the finance audience can be quite skeptical sometimes about brand. How do you validate that so it actually comes across as credible?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think a really good starting point is auditing where your brand is now. What does that picture look like? What is the traffic and the sales that you've got? And then putting that against opportunity. And the way that I've done that in the past, and look, I am a lover of SEO. It's got a really bad name, and I'm actually on a mission to rebrand SEO this year. But I think SEO is really telling to understand the health of your brand alongside things like social listening. So you can be using tools like SEMrush, for example, to understand right now, today, how many people are searching for your branded products. And by branded products, I mean brand plus category. At Champion, that could have been Champion hoodies, for example, rather than just hoodies. An understanding of all the times people search for that term, when are you indexing against that term? And it's the opportunity. So for example, if there are 100,000 people per month searching for a term like Champion or Champion hoodies, and you're already capturing 2.5% of traffic or that audience, then there's opportunity there.
So it's understanding the health of the brand, and then what really that's towards the face side to just on the investment. But then that also becomes the metric and the KPI. Okay, you're telling us the opportunities there.
At some point, you're going to have to start proving that you're getting a bigger piece of the pie. Then when it comes to things like technology, it really irritates me when people assume that the shop window or the consumer journey starts when somebody hits your homepage. Well, number one, your homepage is probably not the most popular entrance page on your website. It's probably going to be a PLP or a PDP, just because the way people are searching, for example, is very different now. And number two, the consumer journey actually starts the moment somebody interacts with your brand. And that's not going to be on your website. That's going to be in a conversation, in a community forum. It's going to be on social media. It's going to be word of mouth. It doesn't just start when you hit a website. So I think that's the second shift that we've got to have, that you've got to think of the consumer journey as the first touch point of a brand. And you need to own that all the way through to CRM, because ultimately, once you've got somebody as part of your database, it doesn't mean that they're loyal to the brand. You really have to invest on the CRM side of it. If you don't do that and have that full consumer journey mapped out, to get and acquire new traffic and new audiences to your website, that's really expensive. But to nurture and maintain the database or the loyalty, membership club that you've got is going to be a bit more rewarding. So I think you need to consider the consumer journey in that way.
Yeah, I like the fact that you've teased this out, that it's not just about putting ads out there and going, "Hey, are we great?" That it has multiple touch points across different ways in which you impact your communication with consumers, and different ways in which you can get your values and your proposition across. So I'd love to hear, how do you go about building that cohesion and connected consumer experiences? Because often you'll have the organic search bit you've touched upon. I've always thought SEO was never the greatest terminology, but it's set in. I think good luck rebranding that. But you've got trading, doing the on-site merchant piece. You've got the CRM side. So you got lots of different people managing different parts of the overall consumer journey, and that can become fragmented. So how do you actually build that cohesion so that the I guess the conversation to the consumer is consistent?
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing to remember is you're right. You've got internal teams who are experts in what they're pushing out. They're ambassadors of the brand, but sometimes they are not the consumer and they don't think like the consumer. I think that's completely fine. So on a brand side, when people are putting consumer journeys together, it's because they assume that's how people are getting to their website or performing an action. And I'm still a believer in, doing eye tracking, heat mapping, speaking to people, having groups, and just watching how they interact with your brand. You have to map what that consumer journey looks like. And it could be just one slide that's got multiple boxes on it. I think IKEA do it really, really well. I can't remember the name of the model, but they basically, I don't know if you've seen this, but in store, they've got these little gadgets where there's just a happy face and a sad face, and they put them all around the store. And you know that you've got arrows that guide you through that store. And at the end of it, it kind of spits up this map that says, well, these were all the touch points of that consumer from the moment they walked in the store to when they got to the other side of checkout, and maybe to the cafe to buy some chips or a hot dog or meatballs. I think that's the most popular. And they were able to identify when people clicked those buttons, what the pain points were. And a lot of people said, look, when it gets to the checkout, you've got the same kind of checkout for people that have got large purchases and small purchases. So IKEA actually shifted how they did it. They've got the self-checkout now for smaller purchases. They've got a path just for trolleys. But they did that because they were able to create a map that showed what is that consumer journey and what are the bad experiences versus the good ones. And I always feel like brands themselves, especially when it comes to e-commerce, we could be doing something similar. We could be understanding where are people moving with our brand. And I know it sounds quite hard because obviously we've got the whole cookie issue where we can't track everybody, but you don't need to track everybody to identify a trend. I don't see many brands kind of taking advantage of UTMs, for example. Like there's such a great way to have one URL that you can use in an advert and then onto your website and then follow them even beyond your website and then just map what that journey looks like. That consumer journey then needs to be presented to the broader teams within the business because like you say, everybody's kind of working in their silos in their teams, not understanding, well, what's happening with customer service? Well, what's happening in marketing? What's happening within trading? Just understanding what that journey looks like. It's not as fluid as people assume that it is. There's a lot of back and forth, but it's about understanding what the pain points are. And I think that's really important. So IKEA is a really good example of that.
Yeah, I didn't realize they did it because as much as I love some of the IKEA products, I'm an online shopper and I going to IKEA stores is my idea of terror on a weekend. But my wife and kids love it. I didn't realize they had that many touch points for the feedback loop. So that's really smart because you can pinpoint specific areas of the store that are underperforming.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. And obviously trying to translate that online might be a little bit difficult, but I just think the mechanism is there to say that, when you've got that consumer journey, you focus on the parts that are working for what. I just think the head-on-list model does that really well. So I really hope that we can translate that to online shopping.
Yeah, well, I guess on the wider customer journey bit, you're right, it's trickier, but on the site you have the ability to do those little icons like feedback on every single page. And I've seen this with some clients where it's specifically targeted and things like collection or product pages, and then identifying specific pages within those groups where people go, don't like this, it's not good. It's not perfect because not everyone clicks on it, but it's amazing how you can just, even with one simple question, get really useful feedback.
Yeah. And that's what I mean about it's not about the number of people interacting with that feedback loop. I just think it's about trend and having enough people. Even on exit surveys, a lot of brands aren't doing this anymore. And I'm thinking, why? You might be able to spot something that's wrong with the page, for example, because it does get in the way. And look, we're also consumers, James. So when we are online, all the pop-ups and all the little buttons on the side, they can get in the way and they can be really annoying. So I think it's probably worth remembering, and this has never changed in all of my time within e-commerce and online. When people, create reviews and give feedback and call customer service, they're either in a really good mood or they're in a really bad mood. And it tends to be the latter. So we've got to kind of take it with a pinch of salt as well, but it can still give us some insight.
Yeah, I was just about to get very excited to talk about targeting the on-page journey, but I know we're coming to that. So that's our teaser for everyone listening to carry on listening for that next part of the journey. But I guess one of the points that you were making is when we're playing this is about the consumer journey is not just about a static page of, right, okay, we've got you to page, now you're going to act, aren't you? But you talked about the art of storytelling, the different types of content. So do you want to talk us about how do you do this? When someone's coming in through the upper funnel, a lot of the time these people haven't had any exposure to your brand before, or they might have had some but very limited, and they're not yet qualified or know that they want to buy from you or what they want to buy. That seems, to a lot of people, I think it becomes really overwhelming. Like, oh God, what do I do? What do I tell them? Or do I just jump on an existing landing page? So how do people approach that part of the customer journey?
Yeah, I think it's a really important topic. And I feel controversial saying this, but I don't think anybody has figured this out. Honestly, I think it's really, really tough. So the first thing is that we all assume that, for example, if we're investing in, let's say, paid social and you see an advert, everybody assumes that the journey is you click on the ad and land on a landing page. And actually, typically, that is the consumer journey right now. Unfortunately, and Meta have said this themselves, brands suffer from a lot of accidental clicks because people are just swiping or they accidentally click on something. And this is the conspiracy theorist in me, especially on TikTok. You've got the up and down swipe, but actually when it's an ad, for some reason we do the action. Accidentally, you then go onto the brand page, whether it's a landing page or not. So I feel like the technologies themselves, they're kind of pulling a fast one to get those clicks in. And I really hope I'm wrong about this, by the way. So I think the first thing is that don't consider the consumer journey just to be the ad to the landing page. Part of me wants to recommend that there are other ways that you can drive an engagement that doesn't drive somebody to a landing page. So for example, on Instagram, you can have moments where you could ask the consumer to say, remind me. So imagine you're dropping an incredible collaboration. It's going to be launched in 1 week's time. Rather than saying, learn more and driving somebody to a landing page, you've got the option to say, remind him. And that's it. You've got them hooked. And then something's coming and they'll get a reminder on their phone. Then you've got paid social in terms of Facebook. Then we've got, for example, your advertising with Meta. And I really believe in trying to get first-party data because of all the issues that we have got around cookies. That's really important to me. But rather than having somebody click on an ad, going to a landing page and fill their details in, why not just harness the lead generation tools that are on Meta, for example, keeping them there? So you've got them. Once you've got them captured, their consumer journey did not even include a landing page. It was ad to filling in a form to now being part of the database. The next touch point is probably going to be an email. So just recognize that ad to landing page is not the only consumer journey you should be thinking about. Think about the other sides of it as well. And I say that purely because of those accidental clicks. But let's assume, because most brands are doing this, that the majority of consumer journey we are planning for are ad strict to landing page. So the first thing is around accidental clicks. And when we think about reporting and the success of a page and what people are engaging with, my first recommendation is to remove the bounced sessions. Let's assume they did that accidentally. They came to the site, they didn't mean to, let's get rid of them. Let's look at the data set that's then left and understand what are they engaging with. And you've got tools like ContentSquare, for example, that allow you to do that within their reporting suite. And I'm sure loads of other intelligence reporting tools do the same thing. So that's the first thing. Let's get rid of them. Second thing is that, and I still see this, and I have to say, and you can cut this out if you want, but I saw this at Pulse last week as well, where there were examples of brands with landing pages, people were showing desktop pages. And as much as we should be a mobile first e-commerce consultant and specialist in everything that we do, people still show the desktop journey. And I can guarantee, whether people want to admit it or not, people design for desktop first. So I think you have to kind of divide the engagement between mobile and desktop. Desktop can look really fancy, loads of different modules, different icons, different interactivity, but mobile tends to just look the same. And that's kind of vertical and stacked content. So I think I would separate those out. So number one, bounce sessions are gone. Number two, divide by platform. So what we see in terms of landing pages is I just see videos and images and text, and there's a lot of push content there where people are scrolling. And one way to kind of offer a pause point and get people to interact with your page is to reconsider the formatting of that content. So what do I mean by this? For example, even just having a video that doesn't play automatically and clicking the play, that is an intent from a user. Or having a widget of some kind to maybe understand. I don't want to say the word quiz. I don't think that's the right thing. But for example, where you've got things like guided selling, what's the right hoodie for you? Just offering those points where a consumer can engage. Once they've done that, you can automatically in your reporting understand there was a segment of people who did engage with this campaign and this is how we measured it. So I think that can be another way to kind of break things up. what I do see quite a lot is brands push out a brand campaign around storytelling that's there to trigger an emotion, but it's got to do with sales. Like internally, that sales becomes that metric. And we have to be honest with ourselves. If you are investing in upper funnel because you want to drive sales quickly, then the central point of your campaign should be the product. So on that page, rather than just driving people to a PLP or a PDP to browse the range, offer that kind of content on the landing page. Don't be ashamed to do it. It's okay to do that to upper funnel. And you might just get some impulse buyers and maybe you get some sales pretty quickly.
That's an interesting point you make about the changing the content, or think about what that landing page experience is. And I'd seen this. I did some work many years ago with Sage on their remarketing program, and we looked at that piece you're talking about knowing where people are in that user journey and what messaging you need. And we used the data to look at when people were on their first visit to an accounting software page versus when they're on their third or fourth. And you can logically conclude that if someone's on their third or fourth visit, they're going to be have a high propensity to purchase because they will have done more research. On their first time, what you want to be doing is tackling barriers, or like you said, getting them into a sign up, or giving them reasons. So, hey, why don't you sign up to our email program and you get all this expert advice free, etc. And it's amazing when you start to micro target and understand that journey, how you can get better campaign performance with things like exit intent campaigns, because the content is tailored to where you think, and it's not 100% accurate. It can't be. Like you said, it's like that trend approach. It's you're assuming based on the data, and some of those assumptions we've added, and there'll be some where it's not working. But yeah, the campaign response rates are far better.
Absolutely. And the other thing I would say is that, when it comes to your landing page, I think, and all brands do this, and I totally get it, but there's so many calls to actions on that page. You kind of almost lose sight as to what that page was trying to do in the first place. And what I would say to brands is that you have to really trust your taxonomy. Like, it's there for a reason. And if a consumer really wants to go and understand more about your product or go somewhere else, they will know what to do. I totally understand on mobile, a lot of the taxonomy is hidden behind a hamburger menu, for example. So you could have anchor links at the top or even at the bottom that allows people to get to other parts of the website. We're doing it that way rather than interweaving it into the page. It makes me cynical, but it's because I work in the area that I just think I understand it a bit better. I think consumers are becoming a lot more savvy. They know when you're trying to get them to buy something, and that's okay. But I just think we can be less in your face about it. And if it is about storytelling and a campaign, I think let's just kind of keep that story there. The nurturing part of the campaign, I think, is about then just taking them down that funnel and doing it in the right way.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I've seen this before, where a product page, for example, doesn't give the information that somebody who needs to be persuaded that this brand or this product is right for them needs, because you need to apply a customer mental model, which is, who's this person? What do they want? What are their likely objections? What are their barriers to taking the next action? And what content can we provide to then do that? And you've got different user types. And you're right, if you just have here's just buying information and not the added value information. One bit of data that's really useful on this is where people land on, say, a product page, then to check the sessions where they've then gone directly from a product page to search and what they're searching for. Because often, if you're tracking this correctly and you're capturing the search query data, you can start to see a lot like question-based searches evolve, in which tell you've got content gaps.
Absolutely. I love this. And, we go back to when we think about brand campaigns, actually it takes a village to make a campaign work really well rather than just one team. And we talk about the impacts to other teams as well. I would love to say that when it comes to brand campaigns, you should be using personalization and dynamic content as much as you can to kind of work and target these micro audiences that we touch upon. And I know that that's a huge level of effort, but to really get success out of a campaign, unfortunately, that is the type of investment you have to do, even down to then the search. When somebody is searching for something, what results is your website returning? And is that kind of matching up to this campaign as well? So it feels like we're making it complicated, but unfortunately, when you have got that investment upper funnel, it's probably the one type of campaign that you do have to think about all of these small things. Not so small, but they will kind of result in action from a consumer. So yeah, extensive. And I think, just a lot of effort, high level of effort is required.
Yeah, I mean, this is the reality. If you're trying to tailor your content or your pages dynamically to suit different audiences, and you talked about UTM parameters, and if you have the right content personalization tools, they can read and use those parameters to then tailor the content on a page. But you're right, though, that's standard e-commerce sites and their page builders don't do that. You need content personalization engine. You need potentially something like a Nosto, a third party on top of it. But I guess it's the one thing that people can do, irrespective of tech, if they're excluded from doing true personalization, is you can quite easily test additional content layouts in templates. So if you notice that your product pages have high bounce rate from this top of the funnel marketing, you can at least add additional layouts. Don't, like you said, don't disrupt the core flow, but add another layout which is how to buy, or a link to a buying. There are things you can do to improve that journey, even if it's not the ultimate in sophistication.
No, but I think, at the end of the day, that's what an e-commerce website is. You go there to buy something. So integrating that campaign across the rest of your site is really important. And actually, it touches upon the fact that I would say an ad frequency of 4 to 5 at maximum is enough for a consumer to engage with a brand campaign. But you have to recognize that, like you just touched upon, you need to invest in A/B testing. And that A/B testing has got to happen, the creative of the advert, the copy in the advert, but also the landing destination. And it's understanding, knowing when to change that landing destination, as well as then what you've got on site. So A/B testing is not just going to be on one part of that journey. And I think if you've got somebody engaging with your ad, but not leaving the landing page, but is showing an interest, get them to appeal for your PPC. I often find, and I think ASOS do this really well, the PLP, even rituals do this really, really well. The PLP is becoming almost like the new landing destination for even upper funnel campaigns. I've seen a lot of these brands kind of interweave commercial along the PLP. ASOS do really well. They are an e-commerce website. They're not trying to get their brand out there, but they've got this dynamic PLP whereby you don't just have the typical grid of 4 or 5 products on one row. They've actually got some images that are bigger and they're using editorial images versus smaller ones. They've broken it up. That formatting works really well on desktop and on mobile. Whereas rituals, I think they're the best example of this. Oh my goodness, their PLPs go on for days. And it's purely because they've got video content in there. They've got anchor links within there. They've got these modules that talk about specific collections. They curate products really, really well. And I just think it's become more than just a PLP now. In fact, I don't think I've even looked at their homepage in such a long time. I go straight to their PLPs because I think it serves upper funnel and lower funnel. And this is an example of efficiencies in-house as well. You don't need to have loads of separate pages. It might just be about enhancing an existing page already.
Yeah, I think that is a great point. And hero content in the grid has become a prerequisite. I remember maybe 3 to 5 years ago, people doing hero content was like, oh, this is unheard of. And also because it was far harder in e-commerce platforms to insert this in because the mechanisms weren't there. So you had to really, really custom code it. But now on modern platforms, it's very easy to adapt those templates to have, like you said, a hero product that appears on maybe across 2 columns rather than 1, and then content that is not product related, but might be pushing brand messages or pushing social proof and persuasion, or linking through to useful content. It's such a default thing now, but so important.
Yeah, I think even Zara did quite well, and they offer the consumer, do you want to see a PLP grid with just 3 items, or do you want to see one with 4 items and less information like pricing in the name? And I love that they give the consumers that option. Maybe for these brand campaigns and upper funnel campaigns, we need to be giving that control back to the consumer as well. How much information do you want to see? And I think even that engagement gives that consumer a bit of control. It goes back to the IKEA effect. And I read a lot about IKEA because I just think the psychology behind it is incredible. But the reason they invest so much in flat pack is because they recognize that consumers want to feel in control of building the product that they've got, rather than it being cheap or just easy for them to transport logistically. And I love that mechanism. So I think we've got to trust our consumers to know what they're looking for and let them shape what that page looks for.
And so it wouldn't be a podcast in 2025 without the buzzword of AI creeping it in, but it would be remiss not to talk about this because AI is being brought into the digital marketing space and is being used quite extensively by brands looking to improve more automation targeting, even around content generation. It's mad what's happening now. So I'd love to hear, what is your take on it? What is the role of AI in this? How can brands harness it, and how can it benefit this upper funnel investment?
Yeah, really, really good question. And you're right, it is the buzzword. I think it will continue to be for the next couple of years, and we're still learning about it. So with AI, the way that I think about it is you've got to, again, divide it into two. You've got the AI that supports operations and analyzing data. And I think that's the first area that brands should start to maximize. You already need to understand that Google and Meta are already using AI. They've got machine learning. They kind of know how to do predictive marketing, trend analysis, things like this. You can also put your reports inside an AI tool and ask it to identify the trends that it's seeing. That's pretty much saved your internal team so much time. I would always fact check and recheck things that come out of AI. I don't trust it straight away. And the way to kind of sell that into your company is that put your own name into AI, like who is James Bird, and see what comes back. That is enough proof for you to say, look, it knows enough, but it doesn't know everything. So always sanity check it. Then you've got the other side of AI that is around content generation. And I kind of consider it as the more consumer facing part of AI. And there's so many ways that this can be used. I think one of the most common ways is, and I've seen this a lot in catalog photography, you can now get AI to produce the catalog photography on your site with models. And there was, I think it was with Levi's last year, where there's a bit of backlash that said, you're using AI to show your jeans on a plus size model, or forgive me to say it this way, but on a black model versus then just a white. So you're using it to show diversification. And the backlash was you should be paying real people to show the diversification. So I think there can be a backlash. You need to be careful. Those companies that offer that technology, they listened to that. And I love that they did. And now what they've done is they now have contracts with actual real life models that says, we would like to create a digital version of you and use you. It'll be cheaper for brands to then use you on their websites. And, we're going to be representing a real person. So even AI is evolving. And I think brands need to recognize that there was a way to use that. Then thinking about other types of content, just, creating it for CGI, graphical things. CGI, I think, is amazing. And I've seen some brands, Max Mara, North Face, they do it quite often, even Maybelline. They're using this kind of content to drive virality online. And I love that. People assume it's real. I think it was North Face that put a jacket on Big Ben, and you actually had people going down to Big Ben to see if it was true, which honestly blows my mind, like how that could even happen. But people were talking about the franchise. I thought that was really exciting. Maybelline put some lashes on a tube, and people thought that was real as well. Obviously, it was not real. But then you've got people like, I think it's Tommy Hilfiger and Zara. They use it in their shop windows where you can be walking by, see yourself, and then see yourself dressed in an item from within store. And I love how AI is not just limited to, it's got to happen in advertising online. No, you can actually bring that into the in-store experience as well. I still think there's a lot of work to do around it. I don't know how I feel about AI. I feel a bit cheated when I see something from AI that's not real. But at the same time, I recognize brands have got budgets, and using AI is a really great way to scale and drive conversation online. And maybe this is just how the world is moving.
Those are really interesting examples I didn't know about either, about the overlaying the jacket for you in your bars. The big danger here, and I was chatting to somebody about this the other day on a panel, which is governance and compliance and privacy. Because if you're using AI models to use people's imagery to then create other imagery, there is a regulatory challenge around what you're doing with that data and what permission you have to use it. So I think I'm with you. I think the potential is huge. My only concern is that not enough brands have sensible conversations about the governance piece.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think AI is still really an unknown area, which is why I feel like the operational side, using it to analyze information is a good entry level. Driving efficiencies in-house with AI, I think, should be number one for all brands. And then how you use it with the consumer, advertising, your messaging on site, I think is still a bit cloudy. And I still haven't seen any consistency with it because it's just changing every single day.
Yeah.
It's a scary thing about it, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yes, the speed. I think what's happened is the speed at which the capability increases is exponential, which means adoption rates are going far higher. But people don't often take the time to plan through the adoption. So I think we're at an interesting point where there's a maturity needed to get true effects of this, but it's not going anywhere. I think we all know that the adoption of AI is only going to increase. Good, brings me on to a final question, which is, we talked about lots of different things in this podcast about what top of the funnel is, why it's relevant, how people approach it, some of the challenges, understanding the consumer journey, and understanding the need to tailor your approaches. Now, I'd love to talk about what not to do. What are the gotchas that people need to be aware of? What are some of the mistakes people make? And so that people go away going, right, okay, I need to make sure I think about this.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few examples. Even I've been guilty of this and putting it onto the table and selling it into a business in the past, where we have to recognize that consumers are really savvy and they know when you are just jumping on a trend. They can see it through your content. And I'm really, really an advocate for trying to ensure that we don't create backlashes with brands. That's always my worry. Examples can be, for example, around Earth Day or sustainability, where you've got a lot of brands now, especially in the clothing industry, that are really using it as a key message. And I think, look, it's good. We need to be talking about it. It's really important. But rather than just saying that actually we've got sustainable practices, investing in things like resale and repurchase and trade-in and recycling, that is more of a story than just saying, yes, we are a sustainable company. So I think brands have got to be careful around greenwashing. Similar type of thing happens around Pride, for example. You get a lot of brands that then just kind of push, yes, we are advocates, but you need to be advocates forever, not just in one moment of time. So those are just seasonal moments that I think consumers are really savvy to. You've got to be really careful on. Then the next thing I think is that you cannot assume the upper funnel investment is going to make an immediate impact. And that goes back to us saying, we've got to manage expectations, not just for internal stakeholders, but also when it comes to asking for budget. Don't assume one quarter is going to be enough to make a dent. Brand and upper funnel marketing is a long-term investment. So I think that's really important to recognize that. I think, again, with consumers, don't try and sell instantly. They can see through this. If it really is about sales, when we think about the targeting upper funnel, target those shoppers, target those people who are, maybe buying competitive brands, and make your content product-led. Don't try and tell a story when actually your end goal is to try and make a sale. Consumers can see through that. But also, don't be shy about it. If you are trying to make a sale, make your campaign around that. And I think finally, it's about ensuring you include as many teams as possible within the business. Don't forget people like customer service. They need to understand why you've launched a brand. What is the purpose behind it? How long is it going for? What are the hero products that you're pushing? Don't forget to let people like that know. Ensure that your strategies within merchandising, within CRM, and within marketing are all lined up. And just make sure you've got regular check-ins. I think that's really important. Where information and reporting is not shared widely, I think that's where you see a common failing, where a brand campaign has been activated, but it's never going to succeed. And I think finally, you've got to course correct. We've already spoken about the fact that A/B testing should underpin any campaign that you're doing, but you also need to recognize when things don't work and course correct permanently. That's really important. So, yeah.
I think that's really nice, parting advice. I love that whole thing about the consistency of what you're doing. So don't create an expectation and then land them somewhere where it's completely different and they feel hijacked. I've seen that too many times, and I've responded to too many ads which really wound me up online, where it's, hey, why didn't you look, we've got this really useful thing, and you land on it, it's got, right now, pay $29.99 in order to get it. You're like, whoa, sorry, you didn't tell me I was going to be paying any money for this. And that's really important, because otherwise you're right, you screw your metrics as well from your campaign.
Exactly that, James. You're so right.
Geet, I've really enjoyed this. I could go and ask you loads of questions. That's a danger of jumping on a podcast with a consultant. So I'm sure that people listening will have found it very interesting. If anyone wants to reach out, wants to discuss this further, or share advice, talk about stuff, how do they connect and reach out?
I am prolific on LinkedIn. My recommendation is just to connect with me on there. Drop me an email. I'm very responsive, and I would love to connect with as many of you as possible.
That's lovely. Thanks so much for taking the time. And thanks for everyone, as always, for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Geeta's contact details are on the landing page on our website, and you can find her on LinkedIn. Until next week, everyone.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast, hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.